Hello everybody and welcome to our next In Focus BU webinar, Relationships Transforming into Partnerships. Really great to have you all here, and it's a real pleasure to welcome our panel. We're hoping that you will stay for the webinar, but also stay online afterwards for the webinar chat, and we'll explain to you a little bit more about that as we go. But firstly, I'd like to introduce you to the panel of people who are joining us today. We're really lucky to have some educators who have and some people who've had some experience with BU. So hopefully you'll hear some really interesting stories and suggestions and really practical ideas. I know I've certainly learned a few things along the way. So we'll get them to introduce themselves, and then they'll join us back in later on. So Jennifer, over to you.
Hi everyone, I'm from Kids & Co Preschool. It's a very small standalone centre-based preschool environment in Hurstville Grove, which is in Sydney. We are a very multicultural community, not only just of families, children, but also of educators. And we actually consist of 21 different languages and cultures. Most of our parents work, and we have a lot of contact with grandparents, so they are an integral part of children's lives.
Great, thank you, Jennifer. Look forward to hearing some more stories about your service a bit later. Rebecca?
Hi, I'm Rebecca. I'm the nominated supervisor of Interreach Family Daycare. I'm based in Dunlequin today, but our Interreach Family Daycare service operates across Riverina Murray of New South Wales and Northern Victoria, and we have 65 registered educators currently providing family daycare to children and their families.
Thank you, Rebecca. Look forward to hearing from family daycare perspective a bit later on too. And now to Alison.
Hi, I'm Alison Boyd Law. I'm the educational leader and nominated supervisor for the Shine Bright Women's South Kindergarten. It's located in rural Victoria in the Mallee in the northwest part of the state. Chris Mcmahon, who you'll meet soon, is my co-worker, and we've been working together for 22 years. We currently have 29 children in our 4-year-old group and 18 children in our 3-year-old group, and that accounts for 47 families.
Thanks, Alison. And Chris?
Welcome, my name's Christine Mcmahon. I'm a Certificate 3 educator for both 3-year-old and 4-year-old at Shine Bright Warraneen South Kindergarten. I have a strong connection in our local community, and I've worked in this centre for 41 years.
That's great, and again, we look forward to hearing from that really small rural perspective that Alison and Christine will bring too. So we'll say goodbye to the panelists for now while we do a bit of housekeeping and get going with the get things set up, and we'll welcome them back later on. So just a little bit about BU. It's a national initiative led by Beyond Blue in partnership with Early Childhood Australia, who we're bringing you this today, and also our other partner is Headspace, and it's funded by the Australian Government. My name is Sarah Richardson, and I'm a State Manager with the BU Early Childhood Australia team. BU aim is very aspirational, and it's to transform Australia's approach to supporting children and young people's mental health in early learning services and schools across Australia. The vision is that every early learning community and school is positive, inclusive, and resilient, and a place where every child and young person, every educator and their families can achieve their best possible mental health. So to do this, one of the things we do BU offers a range of innovative ways of working together, but what we understand and know is really supportive is that creating and being part of a collaborative learning community for educators is really helpful in helping us achieve that work. If you're already a participating BU service, you probably already have connected in with some of the ways you can with BU and are already part of our community. And if you're not, we're really keen and love to have you here, and you'll see some things coming up in the chat that might help you with that. We also hope, as part of the work we do with BU, is that we engage and with an ongoing process of embracing Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives, pedagogies and ways of knowing, being and doing to bring that focus to our conversations and our learning and our understandings of mental health. So in doing that, the ways we do that is that we use what we call Always BU symbols. And I'd like to now acknowledge that I'm meeting with you on the land of the Kaurna people in the Adelaide region. I'd like to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. I'd also like to acknowledge all the lands that we're meeting on today. The presenters are all meeting on lands other than mine, and they would particularly like to pay their respects to those lands that they're meeting from. And all of you are meeting on other lands as well. So one of the things that we can do to support reconciliation and bring about that change that we're looking for that supports the mental health of all of us is to do acts of reconciliation, and acknowledgement is one of those. So we really encourage you to do that, and also to access the BU resources to support you to do that too. The other thing that's really important when we start having conversations about mental health and wellbeing, and those of you who are already participating in BU will know how important this piece of work is, but is acknowledging self-care. So we are using the some Always BU symbols to illustrate this on the screen. So our Make Safe symbol, which talks about that notion of self-care, cultural safety, it's also coming from that real strengths-based perspective. The other thing about, and so self-care is really important when we have a bigger conversation about mental health and wellbeing, but also in this space, sometimes things might arise from you. So I really encourage you to support each other, take care of yourselves. Make sure that whenever you're sharing stories or talking about things that you are sensitive and maintain confidentiality as well, because that's a really important strategy or approach to taking care of ourselves and each other. And also, if things do arise for you, or you do feel like you need some help, seek out some help and talk about it with some trusted people. During the webinar as well today, we're going to learn many ways. We're going to hear some different perspectives, and it's great having the educators from different services, so we'll hear some different things. And I think that's really important as we continue to do this piece of work, that we listen really well, and sometimes that means suspending what we're thinking. We also use play as a way of approaching things, and that includes taking some risks or trying some things out. And when children are playing, we know that that those mistakes aren't seen as mistakes, they're just seen as part of the process of learning things. So I think we need to keep that in mind for ourselves as well. So some technical tips for engaging with us today. One of the things we really like to do to support people is to make this as interactive and an opportunity as possible. We know that, especially over the last few months, there's been a lot of online opportunities for people, and every space is a bit different. So to help you engage with us, there's some tips that we will give you. So if you're not familiar with this go-to platform, because you've probably used a number of different platforms, your screen will typically look like this. You can ask questions. We don't have a chat function, but you can certainly ask questions throughout the webinar, and we have Renee and Sammy in the background who will be responding to your questions. You can stay online later, and we will have a more a free opportunity where you can ask questions. I know some people have said that they're not using their mics. We've turned the mics off, so there's no interaction that way. You won't be using your mics today. You can also ask as many questions as you like. Some of them will be pushed through. If you're having trouble connecting, then use the contact details, and you can sometimes, if you're having trouble with the audio, you can also phone in, and that helps with the bandwidth issues and those kind of things. Also during the webinar, you can respond. We'll have a couple of polls, and we really encourage you to respond to those. That helps us get a sense of what things you're interested in and what things you're thinking about some of the questions that we're asking. There's also a handout for you to download, and I think something that's really important to acknowledge is this is only a small time. It's only going for an hour. So you will continue to have conversations. I'm sure you've already had conversations about this topic before, and this is not a single one size, then we're done. There will be more conversations to be had back in your service. And if you're watching this together with your colleagues, either live or later on, you can use the handout, which has got references and also some reflective questions. So really thinking about, well, what are they talking about, and what does that mean for us in practice? Because I think that's one of the most critical questions to ask. So hopefully that's given you enough support. As I said, if you need some more, just reach out in the chat, and people will be able to offer you some support to engage and come along and have this conversation with us. So let's move into what we're going to be the focus of today's webinar. The title is Relationships Transforming into Partnerships, and the 4 things we're going to talk about is thinking about relationships with children, families and colleagues, and you'll hear from our panel about what that looks like to them. We're going to explore some strategies for developing how those relationships develop into partnerships. We're going to look at how BU supports your learning community to do this work, and also the benefits of partnership for well-being of the whole community. At the beginning, you would have heard me say that one of the aims and the vision for BU is that we have a mentally healthy communities, and so thinking about that whole of community approach, not just what you've learned or what you've done, is really a critical part of this work. So let's get straight into it with a poll so that you can tell us what you know and understand about the strategies you've used to support relationships in your early learning service, because I'm sure you've done that too. And we'll also welcome back our panelist. So we'll start the poll now. So you can select any or all that apply about thinking about relationship building in your service. One of the things, I guess, that's critical about relationships is that it's fundamental to the work we do, and I'm sure that most people would acknowledge that. But good relationships don't just happen. So obviously time is one of those really important critical elements of that, and we're thinking not just about relationships with families, but also relationships with children. We actually don't have any dot points here, so if you've got some other points that you want to talk about, because I'm thinking there's no dot points there that relate to our relationships with each other, because if as colleagues we don't have good strong relationships, then we're not able to provide strong relationships for children and their families either. So maybe just a little bit longer and we'll finish the poll off. Remember, you can click as many as you want, or please feel free to type your other thoughts if you've got other strategies that you've used, because as I said, this is something that's really critical and core to the work we do. So we might close off the poll and we'll have a look and see. So 90, it's really, really high, and look, that I guess that's not surprising, is it, that lots of people think about how they will make time, and I think you have to be really intentional about that. It's very tricky, and it's a complex part of our work. Communication's critical element, that too, and sharing your documentation and getting to know. It's interesting that the getting to know families is lower down the list. We might ask the panelists about that later on. That's a question without notice. So I guess not surprising, but thank you so much for your contributions, everybody. So now we will turn to our panelists and we'll get them to share a story where relationships in their service were transformed into partnerships. So Rebecca, if we start with you, would you like to share a story from your perspective?
Thanks, Sarah. I think from a family daycare perspective, our focus relates predominantly on the relationships we have with the educators that are providing the education and care to children and families. From a coordination unit perspective, that's who we're seeing and supporting on a regular basis. So we start with our philosophy. So our philosophy really underpins the importance of relationships. Making sure that they're supportive, respectful and equal. That's something that we really focus on when all the educators feel that they can contribute and feel valued for their contribution. It's really about acknowledging and valuing each of our roles within our relationships with each other and also families and children. I think we also talk about mental health and wellbeing of not only the children, families and staff, but our learning community. So for us, that's the coordination unit, that's our team of educators. And that's where we start with relationships as well as the mental health and wellbeing. And I think what we focus on is getting to know the educators' why, their passion, their beliefs and values, and really taking the time to actively listen. Sometimes it's easy to listen to respond rather than listen to hear. So we have a big emphasis on that. So educators feel that they can really share with us anything. In family daycare, their personal lives do tend to impact a little bit more because they're not going away to work. So it's really important for us to spend time getting to know educators personally, but also really getting to their why, their passion. And I think that that helps those relationships initially.
That's so important, isn't it, Rebecca? And I guess I'm reminded, and we will continue to be reminded, that relationships sometimes just happen, but actually we need to be very intentional and work really hard at all aspects of all relationships that are part of our work. Jennifer, would you like to share a story from your perspective, from your service? Just need to unmute yourself, Jennifer, so we can hear your awesome story.
That would make sense. Because our service is so culturally and linguistically diverse, we have to take probably more steps ourselves to be intentional with our families. And we've been very fortunate to be part of BU for some time. So we've been able to do the training and be involved in the process of it. So for us, it's more about working as a unified team, and then from there having that approach that is sensitive and consistent, so then we can support families. When we first started, we went through the training. That was excellent, and we talked a lot. It was a lot of discussions in action, and even at our staff meetings, and reflecting a lot of our learning through our own personal philosophies. And it sort of got to a time where I felt we needed a little bit more of a personal support towards each other. And I introduced mentor meetings, and I did that based on the staff's personal philosophies. So I drew from the philosophies some of the ideas and feelings that they had and introduced that. We tried different methods, whether it be group, individually, different educators, but we found now that we do it on a one-to-one basis. I'm very fortunate. I work with another ECT who is the educational leader. So between the two of us, I mentor her, and then she mentors the educators, and then we also come together in our surroundings, because I am still a hands-on director as well, and I'm still involved with the children. So that does work really well. One thing about the mentor meetings, it's not appraisals, it's not professional development time. It's about a time to connect with the educator, to be able to talk about feelings, talk about the concerns they may have, to be in a really confidential and emotionally safe space. And I think that's really important. And I know often when we do come out of those meetings, we all feel very happy and relaxed and quite inspired by each other, which is really nice. So that's one of the really main things I've done. But we also sit with children. I eat with children as well, so we learn about them through that way. We make a lot of time for our families in the afternoon and in the mornings, much like what a lot of the services would do. And we also try to be as open as we can. If we don't hear from families, I'll contact them by email or call them, just to be as open as we can. But that aspect of time is really important, and I think parents really value that, and even our grandparents as well. We use a lot of visual gestures as well because of our language and needs of our grandparents to feel involved as well.
Thanks, Jennifer. And now, Alison and Chris, over to you about what it looks like in your service.
It's just thinking about that, supporting relationships. There's just so much that we all do. It's hard to know where to start. But for us, I think it's just so important to be inclusive and respectful, to stay connected and to maintain open communication and listen. And as Jennifer said, have that time to listen to your families and children and educators. We have a warm, friendly and supportive environment, and it's inviting to everybody. Children, families and educators feel relaxed and comfortable. And if you get the environment right, it's like having an extra adult. It's an enabling environment. So we have natural materials, soft furnishings, a vase of flowers, just those little things I think really, really help. We greet the children with a smile. We take them by the hand, and that's that first step of developing a sense of trust and belonging. Look, we've all probably got so many examples, but here's just a few. We follow the children's interests, and at the beginning of the year, we give them a treasure bag that they can collect things in that they wish to share with us when they start their preschool days. And that strengthens the ties between home and the service. Some you've set up a belonging tree where the children bring a photo of themselves to hang on the tree. We give the children jobs of responsibility, and that's endless, changing the weather chart, watering the garden, having a turn in leading the welcome to country, mounting photos of the children onto blocks that they can use in their play, and that really helps them take ownership of their environment. Having conversations with them, and of course praise and encouragement, and celebrating their achievements with their families and other educators. And these, I think, are really important foundations for successful transitioning from home to an early childhood setting. And they support social and emotional wellbeing, which is essentially mental health and wellbeing. And at the same time we're doing all of that with the children, we're also developing those relationships with families. And Chris, you're going to talk a little bit about this, aren't you?
That's right, I am going to go into that, Alison. Thank you. I'm a great believer that with support from educators, families can feel comfortable leaving their children with educators who are working with their children's best interest. Also, when families feel understood and supported by those around them, they experience better mental health and well-being. For an example, for us, it's very, very important for the meet and greet at the front door or the gate. It's so important to acknowledge other family members, to remember the names of grandparents, extended family, to know the names of other children that might be with them, because that gives them that sense of identity already. It shows that we're interested in them as a family. So to us, that's a really important part of our journey, to make sure that we're making our families relax with that smile and that reassurance that we are interested in them.
Thank you, everybody. I think, one of the things I was wondering about as you were talking, being intentional about those really small things is a critical element to this. And I know given the current circumstances, sometimes we've actually been forced into thinking about doing things differently, and maybe changing some of our approaches to how we do that, support that transition, and that's entry and exit into our spaces. So I think that's really made us, sometimes when we're forced into that, we have to think differently or think carefully about what's important, what are the critical elements of this, and how are we going to do it. So and I also like to thank you, because I dropped a different question and I put you on a different order. So thank you very much for not being thrown by that. And we'll just head into the next poll now, and see what people, because what we want to do now is, we've talked about relationships, but now we want to think about how those relationships underpin and transform into real partnerships. So we're going to ask everybody to select any or all that apply, and after you've had a turn, we might get the panelists to have to respond to some of those things. But I guess just the reason why we're doing this is, as I said, I think relationships very much underpin partnerships, and we really want you to think about what the difference between a relationship and a partnership is, because sometimes we use those words a bit interchangeably. We also talk about involving parents or sharing information or asking back for information, and all of those elements go together, but they're not exactly the same thing, or maybe they are. So it'd be interesting to see what the participants think. I'm not sure, Rebecca, from your perspective, if you were answering this, which do you reckon you would choose, all of them, or?
Yeah, I think that relationships are definitely important to create partnerships. And from my point of view, I think that you need to have the relationship so that they can develop, and they're both just as important. So probably, Sarah, yes, I would be choosing all of them as I thought about the responses available on this poll.
Here's a question without notice for you, Alison. What about you? Which ones do you think you would?
Look, I was just looking at, they just happen naturally without any planning. Initially, you might have a lovely relationship, but then for it to turn into a partnership, I think it has to be genuine and intentional. There are so many things that we do to develop those strong partnerships. So I think a relationship, I agree with Rebecca, relationship probably needs to come first before that true partnership happens.
Yeah. Would the others, would Chris or Jennifer, you'd like to add anything before we close the poll, or are you happy with those kind of, your responses similar?
I agree with Rebecca and with Alison. I think relationships do form into partnerships later, and I think what really stands out to me is really the respectful relationships that you have. I think that's really quite important, and it's important to be reciprocal as well. So when you have established that respect and that trust, I think it really does then start to transfer into more of a bonding relationship and towards a partnership.
Yeah, that language from the earliest learning framework or the My Time, Our Place is really, you know, that respectful, reciprocal relationship. It's really critical, isn't it? Chris, would you like to add anything else before we close the poll? I can't see if you're talking or not, but you might be muted.
Look, listening to all of you, I agree with everything you've said. Am I unmuted?
Yep, good. You go for it. We'll close the poll and you finish off your point.
I think I agree with everything you've said. I think it's really beneficial that we meet the needs of the families through our relationships. But I think one point we have to say to everybody and make it clear that this is ongoing. This is something that just doesn't happen overnight. You've got to understand that you have to put a lot of time into what you're doing, and don't expect things to happen overnight, because it is an ongoing thing. Thank you.
Yeah, that's great. Have we got the results? There we go. Ah, interesting. So it's similar to what you were saying, Jennifer, respectful relationships are most important, and that was clearly the winner. And lots of people said you can't have one without the other. Only 14% of people said that they don't just happen, they just happen naturally without planning, which is similar to what we've said as well. Yeah, so that kind of really sums up, you know, reflects what we were thinking, I guess, as well too. So we might now really come back to the panelists and hear some stories about those moments, and I think your point's really valid, Chris. It's not just one single moment, although it can be, but it's those things over time, and you've got some stories to share, I know, about what that looks like in your service. So we will start with you, Rebecca, if you want to give us a story about that.
Right. So I think what I would say is from the first time a potential educator inquires with our service to see if they want to pursue a role with us and pursue providing family daycare in their own home, we try to make them feel as comfortable as possible. You know, making sure we're listening to their questions, responding appropriately, giving them time to think about the process. A lot of our educators, once they start, maintain a relationship with Interreach for a long period of time. Most of our educators have been providing family daycare under the Interreach banner for 5 years or more. We have a lot of educators just going up to 20 and 25 years. So I think that promotes what we believe about relationships. But I think during COVID, it's really emphasised the importance of those relationships transitioning to partnerships. I think that sometimes from a coordination unit in family daycare, educators maybe expect that we have all the answers. And I think that we have shown some vulnerability over the COVID time because we haven't had all the answers to every question. We've had to do a lot of deciphering of information, and we've really had to say, we don't know the answer to that question. We'll find out for you, we'll get back to you. I did a lot of live streams during the first 3 months of lockdown from my home in my bedroom with 5 children in the background. And I think for us, that was able to show the educators some personal connections and those vulnerabilities. And we found that after those, educators were reaching out to us to ask us more questions, to want to help, to want to be more engaged. It just gave them some empowering abilities to go, wow, these people do care about us, these people trust us, and we can see that they're feeling a little bit vulnerable at this time. And I really think that was even though we believe that we always have really great relationships, and we do believe that, I think this COVID time has really allowed educators to see that we really want to be working alongside them, with them, supporting them. We want them involved. We want them actively engaging with us about how our service runs and operates. So I think that's been really nice. COVID has been really challenging, but for us, there's been some really positive outcomes. And I think that's one of them, just for educators to go, wow, these people that we, that we are visiting, we're looking at compliance, really care about what's happening, and they don't have all the answers, and that's okay. And I think that was the really important message. So I think that's my big learning about those relationships and partnerships, and particularly over the last, 5 to 6 months of where we're at in the world at the moment.
That's really interesting, isn't it? Because that notion of relationships being equal and reciprocal based on respect is really, really well illustrated in there. Jennifer, I know you've got a story that is very much developed over time and is a beautiful example of that ongoing relational work that underpins those partnerships. Would you like to tell that story?
Yeah, this story started a few years ago. We had a lovely young child that started the centre with no English, and after their transition period, we noticed that they started to want to connect socially with children, but just didn't have that social language and capacity to reciprocally interact and form like discussions with children and educators. But what we noticed during the times that we would eat was just the food that was coming into preschool. It was cultural food, but it was very well, it was decorated, and I remember because we sit down and we'd talk about our different foods, and I'd share my cultures, and children would say that smells, and so, well, that's my cultural food. But with this particular one, the children were just really excited by it, and so was I. And we asked the mother, well, actually, I contacted the mother by telephone because Mum was working, and I asked who cooks these dishes, and thinking, well, maybe we could find a way to connect with the family, because the grandmother would come in and drop the child off, so we really didn't see the family a lot. But we knew that we could try and develop a partnership with the family in some way. And the mother actually said it was a grandfather, and we went, oh, we haven't seen the grandfather. And then she shared that the grandfather won't come in because he doesn't speak English. I thought, oh, wow. So then we collaborated and talked about, well, okay, well, how can we try and bring this family into our community, but do it in a really respectful, sensitive way? How can we do that? So this is where we really drew on the mum and the dad. He got a little bit involved as well, and we asked if we could possibly create a time where the grandfather could come in and cook with us. And her response was, look, not just yet. Let me see how I can arrange that. She had to also organise time, so it took about a month. So there was a lot of, exchanging emails and telephone calls, and so we arranged this fantastic day. And there's an ongoing thing now. We do it for lots of different families. It's really informed our practices. But on the day, we set up the activities. I had a bicultural educator come in on that day, and throughout the activity and the cooking experience that all the children got involved in. So it was basically what the child brought in on the day or several weeks that we then made on the day that the grandfather came in. And it was just so lovely. We sang their cultural language songs, and then that you could see just those visual gestures, of him smiling and so forth. And afterwards, I emailed the mum and asked if she could give me some feedback on how the grandfather felt, because we were just so happy. That it was such a lovely experience. And her response was that he was actually overwhelmed, and he was overwhelmed because the children were happy and involved, and we were involved, and he felt he was involved with us, and through us speaking in his language, he felt that sense of belonging with us. And her response was that his wish is that he could be able to speak English to the children one day. So this is a few years ago, and we've used a lot of those practices and that knowledge and those thinkings in our practices with families individually, because we have so many different cultures that we're coming from the unknown. So we really have to take those steps really sensitively. And even in our language as staff, we all speak very similarly. Our approach is very sensitive and careful. So yeah, and it's been lovely. Now we see the grandfather because he lives locally, and he'll wave, and you know, he'll say ni hao, and we say ni hao, say jian, and so there's this lovely relationship that we've developed. And now we've got the next child coming through, so we've already heard from the parent, and this is lovely, I think, partnership, because it's very deep and meaningful and reciprocal.
That's lovely. We've got some comments coming through. Someone's got goosebumps listening to that story, Jennifer. So it is a beautiful illustration of, you know, and you use lots of language, how it informed your practice going forward, but you talked lots about belonging, connectedness, being involvement, you know, that how you actively reached out for feedback, and so it wasn't just you knowing everything or just telling or asking the parent. It was very much about, well, what's going to work for you. And I think the other thing that struck me this time, and I've heard that story a few times now, but is that you made an assumption that it was grandma.
Yeah, that was
we make so many assumptions, don't we? And we then go forging ahead based on our assumptions. Sorry, what were you going to say?
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. I mean, I didn't vocalise it, but we thought it. And we thought, oh, we'll get the grandmother in. And then we found out the grandfather would actually made us think, hang on, we need to really get to know this family. And that we understood that we really didn't know the child holistically, and we needed to do that. And then what's was just a beautiful outcome from that is that as time went on, this child who was very shy and didn't want to communicate and didn't know how to, actually took on a leadership role themselves before they started school. And it's just really lovely to see that. So when we start seeing that development and we see the child happy, family happy, educators happy, we know we've got the right recipe working.
Yeah. I think the other critical element of that that's really important too is those partnerships we develop are because of the child, and that helps us with boundaries around our relationships with families as well. So I think that's a really critical, the reason for the partnership is because we want to do the best and support the child to develop into their potential, which is what happened for you. However, that's a really good segue into what the experience is for Alison and Chris, who are in a very rural community where, you know, where those partnerships and interaction and relationships go beyond the service, because you're very integrated into everything and connected in a whole range of different ways. But I'm sure you've got some stories that you'd like to share about that, or some other things as well.
That's right, Sarah. In a small community, when my children were younger, you'd often see, you know, siblings and children at the football, the netball, the swimming carnival, the tennis, everywhere. So you really, being in a small community, I think you need to be on your toes all the time, because you're actually exposed all the time. So I'm sure lots of people are hearing me on that. We have so many stories, as you all would, but I guess for us, it's a journey with all children and all families and educators, and developing relationships and maintaining partnerships is an ongoing thing, and it becomes embedded in your day-to-day practices and in your pedagogy. Partnerships are developed and maintained in so many ways, and as our panelists have probably already, or they have already covered. So, you know, we welcome children, families and educators into our service. We listen to them, we answer questions, offer advice, exchange information and exchange learning, their learning, the children's learning, our learning about their children, discussing their individual learning goals, and many opportunities are offered for families to become involved. It's a little bit tricky now with COVID-19, but there are still ways. We can still email and text, and just probably a couple of weeks ago, or more than that, this last term, probably a few weeks ago, we set up a tree of hope, and we asked families to write a message about what they hope for with post-COVID-19, and we had the most beautiful messages about what families hoped for. So that was a way of connecting families with their preschool community. We're currently setting up a parent library with the priority of mental health and wellbeing and mindfulness. We keep communication lists so we can keep a track of families that we've spoken to, and if we haven't spoken to a family for a little while, we think, oh gosh, yeah, we better have a chat with that family. We haven't spoken to them for a while, just to touch base. And so there are just lots of things that we can do. Actually, I'm just looking at my notes, I'm sorry. There's one thing I did want to say. We organise community projects, so where we might have something at the front gate or the front door. It's at the gate at the moment because of the COVID-19, but we might set up a community project where parents and children work on a piece of artwork together, and that creates a lovely bond between the children, their families, educators, and part of that community and sense of belonging. And Chris, you had some more things that you were going to add to that. She's forgotten to unmute herself, I think.
Yeah, she has. Just unmute, Chris, so we can hear your story.
Sorry about that, everybody. Look, Alison, you've covered it really well, but one of the most important things that I'm hearing today is the use of communication, which we're all doing on a daily basis. It's just the key. It's the number one thing. And look, there's so many ways that we're all using communication, and probably with the COVID and what we've been dealing with lately, one of the things that I find a job that I can do, and I really enjoy doing it, is just making that simple phone call or text, or just perhaps sharing a story that a child might have shared with me that was funny or kind, or just a little bit out of the usual sort of thing that they talk about. And families like to hear that, and it gives them that sense of that we're interested in them and interested in what their children are sharing with us. And I just think it's a wonderful, positive way for educators to have that relationship and partnership with the children that they're working with, as well as the families. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. It was interesting. I was listening when you were talking, Alison. I was thinking about that notion of hope, and for me, that's one of the aspects of partnership, where because there's a lot of times in early childhood where we're telling parents what we want them to do. Make sure you don't put this in the bag or put that in the bag, or make sure you fill in that note, and that kind of stuff. And then also asking them to do things and to be involved, and all of those is fine. But sometimes I think we forget, or we don't often give them opportunity to talk about what they really want for their child. We're busy telling them about what we've programmed, and then we get a bit upset when they haven't had a look at the fabulous programming we've invested a lot of time in. But when have we actually asked them what they really want for their child? Not what they want them to learn, but what they hope. I think that language around hope is really important. What is it that you really want for your child? Because that's what parents care about. That's where they're coming from. We put our layers of our professionalism on that, and we should, but we have to be mindful to give space to parents to let them, to share that opportunity as well. So that just reminded me. For me, that's one of the dimensions that actually turns it into a partnership. In that reciprocal way, where we're actually offering a space for parents to talk and share what their hopes and aspirations for their children are. So
Sorry, Sarah, I was just going to say, which I think is beautiful about what parents hope for their children, but I think for even centre-based care and preschool services, for educators as well, and I think that's when, from a family daycare perspective, there's lots of regulations, there's lots of rules, there's lots of national quality standards, and from a service perspective, we have lots of policies and procedures as well, and I think what we really focus on is going back to the educator's why, the educator's passion, and what they really want for children as well is sometimes what we need to do to ensure that educators are really feeling valued and supported, because there are lots of things happening in the early childhood world, and I think it's beautiful to ask parents what they hope for, but I think it's really important as well to continue asking educators what they hope for themselves as educators and professionals, but what they hope for families and children as well.
Yeah, thank you, Rebecca, for reminding us about that. We will move on to the next question, because I think it's a good segue into thinking about how BU might have supported you to bring, all of you were doing this work anyway, and I'm sure everybody out there, and that's one of the things that I think is critical to BU, is that it builds on and acknowledges what you're already doing, what you already value, what's already important to you, but it helps shape how that goes. So what we will hear from each of you now is how BU has helped you do that. And Jennifer, we might start with you in talking about, so if you could talk to us a little bit about how BU has helped you do the work you were already doing.
I think BU has given us an ability to be able to have like a toolbox, to be able to go back to it all the time. And when there's circumstances, for example, the onset of COVID, it was BU that actually informed our practices. It was BU that gave us the opportunity to meet, because we joined a community of practice, which was actually, funnily enough, the relationships with families, one that we had already been involved in. But it was that connection with other educators around Australia. And we all joined as a team, so all educators joined with me. And that, because we had our background knowledge and we had all the messages and the understandings and the training behind that in our relationships with our families, we had a clearer picture of how to approach the next steps. And I think BU has allowed us to do that. So that journey from, wanting to connect with families and to build that partnership with them during this time, it wasn't as maybe challenging as it was before while we were still learning. And I think that's where that connection between the relationship and the partnership does grow. It is a process and it takes a while. And yeah, that's how we do that. We do that with a lot of connecting, but our mentor meetings also help. And what Rebecca was saying too about, empowering the educator, I think when you have that time and you can meet with the educator one-on-one, you can actually support each other's feelings and emotions, and that's really important.
Yeah, self-care and educator wellbeing is a critical element to BU too. Chris and Alison, do you want to talk a bit about how, I know while we were having a practice, you were talking about all the bits of BU that you've tapped into and how that's really helped you. So do you want to talk a little bit about how BU's helped you to build on this work?
Well, BU offers a range of resources and to educators and families. We've got the national check-ins, and we've really enjoyed the mentoring sessions, webinars, and look, it's just been fabulous. It's given us the confidence to support families and children and ourselves, and it guides us and reinforces that we're heading in the right direction. And as Jennifer said, it gives you that little toolbox of things that you really can use. It reminds us to nurture social emotional wellbeing in our children. I think that's been the biggest thing for me. And mental health and wellbeing, initially when we started this back when it was Kids Matter, it just seemed so daunting, mental health and wellbeing. I thought, how can I, say this to families? But it's all about children's social and emotional wellbeing. And it also reminds us to nurture and strengthen the protective factors in children, their self-esteem, their confidence, resilience, and that sense of belonging and identity. And the more protective factors children have, the better they cope. And this has been particularly significant during the COVID-19. If our service was the one normal thing in a child's life, then that was a really good thing, because we were able to offer those and support those protective factors. And the other thing I wanted to say is BU is not something that when you've completed all the components, you tick the box, you think, yes, we've done that, we don't have to do anything else. It's really an ongoing journey, supporting mental health and wellbeing and being a part of BU. They are ongoing things, and it's become such an important part of our teaching, our philosophy, our service goals, which Rebecca was talking about before, and our QUIP. And it's I think been recognised by our managers, Shine Bright, that it has been such a valuable resource and a valuable framework that they're going to make it a priority for the other services that they manage. And Chris, you've got a few little things, a few thoughts to add there too, haven't you? You're on mute again.
I was actually thinking the same lines as Jennifer. It's a wonderful toolbox. It's a toolbox that I take with me most days, and it's a toolbox that I can even have at home. It relates to just ourselves and our own well-being, which is terribly important to make sure that if our well-being is 100%, well, we're going to be able to come to work, we're going to be able to function at a really good level. But the most important thing with the tool in the toolbox is keeping up that maintenance, making sure that we keep in tune with our BU, keep our regular online meetings, encourage other people to perhaps get on board, because the benefits that have come out of it are absolutely wonderful. And I've thoroughly enjoyed doing BU, and I hope I can continue doing it for a long time. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Chris and Alison. That's great. Rebecca, would you like to talk about how you've used BU to support your priorities and your direction as well, particularly as it relates to educators?
Yeah, a lot of what Alison, Christine and Jennifer have said definitely relate to what we've done in our organisation. I guess we had a little bit of resistance. Some of the educators thought, here's something else I have to do. So we did start with one of the modules that really gave some statistics about the impact of mental health and wellbeing on young children. And I think that resonated with educators. They went, I can really make a difference to these young children when they're in my care. So they all then were able to see the importance. But I think for BU, the importance is that it's not an add-on. It really just reinforces the practice that we're doing on a day-to-day basis and gives us as educators the confidence to communicate with families and colleagues and other professionals and children, and really helps reduces the stigma of mental health and wellbeing. And that's something that our organisation and services really committed to. And we've been a part, like some of the other services, of BU when it was Kids Matter. And I'm really pleased to say that we've done this for such a long time. And our organisation, which has a lot of different programs, has now got a mental health strategy. So I think that, we're really proud that we started this process, and our organisation is now committed to a mental health strategy for every program in our organisation.
Thank you, Rebecca. And I think one of the things I'm conscious of too around that is that that idea of embedding, and we talk about that all the time, but by having it in your policy, and you talked earlier, everyone talked earlier about putting it in your philosophy, all of those things really, and tapping into it in an ongoing way. And everyone's talked about that too. It's not just a you do it once and it's a done thing. So BU is a framework, and it can be contextualized to every context. So what it looks like in each of your services is going to be very different, but you're still using the same framework to kind of guide you. And you've all talked about the toolkits and the opportunities that it offers you. Now I'm thinking about how much time we've got. So if you can quickly just maybe we'll just have this one more as a way of finishing off, I think really is how has if we're thinking about partnerships, how they continue to create that sense of community and a sense of well-being for that whole community, again going back to the BU vision. So Chris and Alison, would you like to speak to that first?
Yes, I can speak to that. When families and children and educators feel welcome and comfortable and accepted and respected, that's when we have those positive, strong partnerships and that strong sense of trust and identity developing, and in turn that nurtures and fosters that mental health and wellbeing in the community. And as you can see here today, Chris and I have a very strong partnership, and we work well together as a team, and we have for 22 years. It's quite strange that we're in different sites. We felt as if we're being cut in half today, I think. But promoting mental health and wellbeing is a team responsibility, and we're supportive of each other, the children in our care and our families, And this strengthens relationships and creates partnerships and ultimately better outcomes for children and families. And for me as a leader, and I think this is really important, it's not about following a recipe or sitting at the top. It's about being open and taking into account everybody's opinion and working together in partnership to contribute to the well-being of our preschool community. And that means the staff, the children and their families. And Chris just has this lovely way, we were talking about this yesterday, and I called it being in the moment. She has a wonderful way of being in the moment. So she's going to offer her a few comments about being in the moment.
Well, being in the moment to me is taking that opportunity. Sometimes you can see perhaps a bit of body language, you can see that somebody's perhaps just not quite right. And it's always a good opportunity to read the play and to just ask the simple questions. Look, are you okay? Do you like your hair? Or, gee, you know, you look fantastic today. Or, those sorts of things are really, really important to be aware of people around you and to be aware that sometimes there's an opportunity that you might take up because there could be some signs letting you know that perhaps things aren't right. So in a tactful way, you've always got to be on air to perhaps be there and to take that information back to your team and to talk about perhaps what you've noticed, what you've seen, what you're perhaps concerned about. So again, that's that relationship, not only with the family, but it's also with your team. It's taking back vital and interesting information that could end up being very valuable to the program, to the child's learning. And I just think it's terribly important to be in tune. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Jennifer, would you like to talk about what that means for you, that partnerships and how they contribute to the sense of community and wellbeing?
Yeah, just listening to Christine, it's like I'm listening to one of my educators. I have an educator very similar to Christine, many years experience in Certificate 3, and she approaches those circumstances where she notices things that might not be right in exactly the same way Christine does. And I think that really to me resonates. Somebody who has that sensitivity and understanding, but that can also share that with others. We have 3 generations of educators here, so we don't look to each other by our qualifications or our experience. We look to each other by our knowledge. And I think bringing that together has really meant a lot for us. But I think BU opens those doors for us to be able to enter into each other's world, and to do that in a way where we all feel safe to do so, and it's confidential and respectful. And then from there we can move into supporting the best interests for children with the families. So we always make a point of taking things very slowly and step by step, and looking at each family and child individually. I'm a real believer that practices need to be sensitive and consistent. And I think if we can do that as a community, then I think things are working well for us. But it's everybody's qualities. And this particular educator always said, and said many years ago, everybody's input needs to be valued. And so we always have that at the back of our mind all the time, whoever we're speaking with, whoever we're talking with, that to value their input.
Thanks, Jennifer. And Rebecca?
Thanks, Sarah. I think that from a family daycare perspective, we've got lots of learning communities within our community. So we look at it from a coordination unit. We then look at it from a coordination unit with our educators. Then educators each have a community within their own family daycare service. Then the educators are a community between themselves. So I think our focus when we look at BU is our peer support in learning. So for our organisation, we use a closed Facebook group, and we use lots of tools that BU provide to share with educators, to get educators sharing their thoughts and feelings, not only about BU, but on all aspects of facilitating a quality early childhood service. And I think that's where the respectful relationships and partnerships start to develop, when everyone gets that opportunity to contribute. So that's something that has made our community, I think the partnerships in our community better from an educator's perspective. that peer support and learning.
That's great, and that's a lovely, I think, note to finish on, and I'm conscious that we've got one minute left, but what I'd really like to do is to thank all of you for your stories. We've got some amazing things coming through the chat about these experienced speakers, so I'm not sure that you would call yourself experienced speakers, but you're certainly coming across like that from the audience, and they've really enjoyed your contributions. We are going to stay on, and as Rebecca said, you know, we're really keen to have people part of our BU community, or the BU community that where we all belong, and we can bring some of those elements and work in partnership together. Jennifer's talked about the early years learning communities, and that's an opportunity for you to connect in, or with your consultant. There's a whole range of ways you can join in. So we are staying online for a Q&A panel where we'll have a bit more flexibility. You might be able to ask people some questions. You guys might want to ask each other some questions as well. If you can't stay on and join us, then when you exit you'll be prompted to do an exit survey. Please complete the exit survey, particularly if you've got more than one person joining, and add their name so you all get a certificate. If you participated live today, you'll get a certificate. There will be documentation available, and you will receive a recording later on, and also the webinars are always available on the website as well. So for ongoing conversations, because sometimes I know people will use webinars for PD later on as well. So if you don't want to, if you want to find out a little bit more about BU, jump on, or if you're keen to stay on and join us in a bit of a Q&A, then we're looking forward to that as well. It's a little bit more casual, I guess. So thank you again, everybody. Don't forget to fill in the exit survey. We really like to hear your thoughts. And particularly a great big round of applause to and thank you to all of to Jennifer, to Christine, to Alison, and to Rebecca. It's been fabulous having you, and people have really enjoyed hearing your stories, and so thank you so much for your time and for sharing. And we'll say goodbye and finish up the formal part, and we'll just stay online and as we move into the Q&A panel.